On April 28, 1988, at Hilo International Airport in Hawaii, you might not believe it, but this plane was getting refueled for its seventh flight of the day. It's a Boeing 727, a variant of the Boeing 737, which is the most popular narrow-body, short to medium-range aircraft in the world. At that point, it was already 19 years old, with a total of 35,496 flight hours and 8,968 takeoffs and landings. Living on the island of Guangdong, which is the most famous in the region, people mainly get around by plane. The constant travel between the various small and large islands has created a very stable market for airlines over the years. For the locals, the white plane with orange stripes from Aloha has become a big part of their everyday life. Just to add a bit about this plane, it's affectionately named after Queen Liliuokalani, the last and only Queen of Hawaii, and it ranks second in operations. In the world of planes, this one ranks just behind another from the same company, and today it's making its next stop at Honolulu International Airport on Oahu. It's a route it's flown thousands of times before, covering nearly 400 kilometers in about 45 minutes. The captain of the flight is 44-year-old Robert Kona, a veteran pilot with 12 years of service at Aloha Airlines. He's got a wealth of experience with 8,500 flight hours under his belt, including 6,700 hours flying Boeing 737s. The co-pilot is Madeline. Mimi Tomkin is an incredibly talented and disciplined female pilot. She has a total of 8,000 flight hours, with 3,500 of those on Boeing 737s. Also in the cockpit is a staff member from the FAA who oversees the pilots. The flight attendants include Jato Tomita, Michelle Honda, and lead attendant Clara Bell, 58, who has been with Aloha for 37 years since graduating high school. She's well loved for her caring and dedication to the passengers. Outside, passengers were lining up to board the plane. One female passenger, who seemed to have a problem, paused, impacting the flight. But she acted like she hadn't seen anything and didn't bring it up with anyone. Everything went on as usual after 89 passengers were settled and followed all the safety rules. At 1:25 p.m., Flight 243 got the go-ahead to depart, and the loud roar of the engines finally got the plane moving and into the air. The weather was nice, visibility was good, and with the co-pilot at the controls, they quickly climbed to a cruising altitude of 24,000 feet. Pilot Ann Doan seemed pretty relaxed. They were chatting about the scenery as they approached Kahula Island, which made sense since they fly this route regularly. Inside the cabin, after the flight attendants made sure the passengers had their seat belts fastened, they said, "Now let's get into the cockpit to see how things are going." Just as the takeoff was about to happen, the county pilot's head was yanked back. She could still see the grey fragments floating in the cabin as the captain quickly took control from the co-pilot. He was trying to regain balance as the plane kept lurching left and right. The co-pilot immediately set the transponder to emergency code 7700 and tried to contact air traffic control, but the signal didn't go through. At that moment, the best option Phi Ann Doan had was to turn the plane around. They had to land at the nearest airport, which is on Maui. Music. At the ground station, air traffic control in Honolulu noticed an emergency signal from Flight 243 on their radar. They saw a plane moving erratically, and it seemed to be descending rapidly toward Maui. They immediately tried to get in touch with the flight crew but got no response. Meanwhile, the staff outside began to see that the passengers were starting to feel more at ease. Flight 243 had a flight number. "We're all set to keep in touch, and I'll let you know if there are any changes in the wind." At 1:53, Thom called back to Maui ground control, "This is 243. It looks like we've lost a door. We've got a hole on the left side of the plane, but I can't figure out why ground control can't hear this info." They also connected with Pilot Doan but didn't get a response either. 243, "Are you still okay? Can you hear our signal?" The station wasn't keeping track, but at that moment, they were already thinking about the worst-case scenario. Luckily, a voice came through, and everyone let out a sigh of relief. "ATC here, we need to evacuate immediately. There's been a lot of injuries among the passengers. Can you give us a head count? We can't reach the flight crew, but I'm sure they're in really bad shape." "Alright, 243. We'll send an ambulance right away. The captain needs to land the plane ASAP, their aircraft is about to break apart." At any moment, they were facing each other. Outside the cabin, the passengers were starting to pray as the plane made its final turn towards the airport. Captain Lee was setting up the landing gear, and both First Officer Mimi and Tomkin received prestigious awards for their professionalism after successfully saving the passengers. In 1996, a memorial for flight attendant Len Xing was inaugurated at the international terminal of Honu Airport, right nearby. The aisle at the boarding gates of Aloha, along with colleagues and passengers, will always remember her as an exemplary flight attendant. In BIS Airway Flight 5390, the captain was swept up to the top of the plane at an altitude of 17,000 feet at 6:30 a.m. at Buckham Airport. The British Airways crew had been preparing early for the long journey of over 1,500 kilometers to Malaga, Spain. The captain of the flight was 42-year-old Timothy Lane Carter, who had 21 years of experience flying commercial flights. The flight, lasting 11 hours and 50 minutes, is being flown by Alist, a 39-year-old pilot with 7,500 flight hours under his belt. He just joined the British Airways crew. There are also 4 other crew members and 81 excited passengers, all eager to get to the beautiful city of Malaga. Before takeoff, Aitchison did a final check around the plane while the captain reviewed the maintenance parameters and confirmed there were no technical issues. It's 8:20 local time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I'm Lancia, and I'd like to welcome you aboard our flight. I hope you have a great and relaxing time. We're ready for takeoff now with flight BM 5390 on the British Aircraft Corporation BAC 111. The plane is slowly moving off the runway. Music, at 8:22, was set to autopilot, and by 8:33, we've climbed to about 17,300 feet, which is roughly 5,300 meters. Everything is going smoothly so far. Both pilots loosened their shoulder harnesses to relax. The captain, L. Scott, tightened his thigh strap and looked out the window to enjoy the stunning view as the sunlight streamed down over the town. Suddenly, L. Scott felt something off. He turned to his county pilot and asked, "Did you turn down the AC?" The co-pilot, who was busy with his tea, immediately denied it. "I feel a bit of a chill coming in, but I didn't change the temperature." The captain started to doubt his instincts when, all of a sudden, the glass started vibrating with little streaks appearing on it. Lan was still trying to figure out what was happening when suddenly a nightmare hit. As Captain Ogden opened the cockpit door to bring food to the crew, a loud explosion went off. Steam rushed in, filling the cabin, and the windshield on the captain's side was blasted away. Captain Lan was instantly sucked out by the rush of air from the pressure drop. Seeing this, Ogden quickly grabbed her by the neck. The strong wind slammed me against the cockpit roof, and the upper part of my body got hit hard by the freezing wind. At that moment, the captain's knees got stuck in the controls just as the autopilot cut off. The plane suddenly dropped altitude, and the air pressure slammed the cockpit door against the control panel, blocking the throttle and causing the plane to speed up. To make things worse, debris from the passenger cabin flew straight into the cockpit. The flight was getting tossed around by the wind, and the plane was shaking violently. Passengers were starting to scream in sheer panic as their belongings tumbled everywhere. The flight attendants quickly tried to calm everyone down and instructed them to brace for landing at any moment. Outside, the weather was brutal, with temperatures around 17 degrees Celsius. The BAC 111 was hurtling through the air at 650 km per hour, and it wasn't just the captain who was in danger. The lives of all 87 people on board were at risk. With all the pressure weighing heavy, everyone was relying on First Officer Arison. He quickly took charge of the plane. Even though Arison had just joined the flight crew and didn't have much experience on the BAC 111, he tried to stay calm. He knew he couldn't let himself get nervous because one wrong move could turn the flight into a disaster. He worked to reactivate the autopilot and sent out an emergency call. ATC 5390 needs help. There's been an explosion on the plane. Requesting emergency landing, the ATC got the signal and responded right away. But at that point, the county pilot couldn't hear the ground instructions because the wind was so strong, his ears were just filled with whooshing sounds and alarm bells. It was a really dangerous situation. The old BAC 111 didn't have enough oxygen masks for everyone. If they couldn't land in the next 30 minutes, everyone could suffocate. So, Fong made the call to just drop altitude and find the quickest way to land the plane. To ensure safety, Chief Flight Attendant Ogden is still holding on tight to the captain, but it looks like he's worn out. His hand is even badly injured from the friction and has stiffened up from the cold, yet he's not giving up. Another flight attendant, Simon Roger, has come to help him hold on to the captain. Losing contact with ATC, along with the cabin crew reporting that all the passengers are showing signs of shortness of breath, has made the situation even more dangerous. The only way to fix this situation is The pressure gauge was stuck, and the windshield was damaged, which meant the captain had to risk his life to save nearly 90 passengers on the plane. According to airline regulations, when a plane has an in-flight emergency, the crew must sacrifice everything to ensure the safety of the passengers, unless they choose not to. Therefore, the county pilot suggested a vote among the 84 passengers to make a final decision. Flight attendant John was in charge of announcing the situation and tallying the votes. "Ladies and gentlemen, after the recent incident, our captain has been swept out of the cockpit, and the crew is trying to hold on to him. Now we're in a tough spot. Should we let the captain fall and try to seal the hole to regain pressure inside the plane, or should we keep him from falling and risk losing the rest of us? This is a matter of life and death for all the passengers. We need a quick vote. There are 81 people on board, and if more than half agree, we'll take action right away. So, who's willing to leave the captain behind? Please raise your hand." The scene was chaotic. Suddenly, it calmed down. A few seconds later, one person raised their hand, then 2, 5, 10, and then 20 people joined in. Seeing this, the flight attendants tried to hold back their tears. In total, there were about 40 hands raised. They felt that it wasn't fair to let one person's life endanger everyone else's. Then a loud cry from a 10-year-old boy broke through. "Mum, please don't raise your hand. If you do, the pilot will die. We need Dad and Mina. Waiting for the captain is tough, too. He's got a family, and they all hope he'll come back." That cry really woke everyone up around. If a kid can understand this, then why are the adults being so selfish? People started to lower their hands one by one. Regardless, at this point, they had already boarded a flight, so they might as well let fate decide. Some still acted tough, but eventually, they lowered their hands too. So, the outcome is that Captain Lan is being held back, but his current situation is unclear. The captain was in pretty bad shape, his head and hands kept smashing against the side of the plane, blood running down. His eyes were wide open and he was completely still. The guys in the cockpit started to think he was dead and they looked at each other, scared. Ogen tried to stay calm. No matter what, the captain wasn't going to give up. He and Simon used their seatbelts to tie Lan down and freed the captain's legs from the controls. They believed the captain was a tough fighter and wouldn't surrender. At that moment, the plane was flying through hell in the airspace. The busiest airport in the UK has a ton of flights coming in and out every day, and if they don't stabilize the plane quickly, there's a real risk of collision and accidents. But despite all efforts, First Officer Back 111 is still spiraling down at 24 meters per second without using autopilot. It seemed like everything was about to crash and burn, but just then, he heard a message from air traffic control that opened up the first glimmer of hope. ATC was guiding him in for a landing. Landing at Southampton Airport on flight N390. If only we could touch down quickly, it's really close now. But once again, fate is messing with the passengers and crew of 5390. First Officer Aitchison has never landed at Southampton in his career, he's not familiar with the airport or the warning systems here. And on top of that, all the charts and flight documents got sucked out of the cockpit. He's contacting ATC to ask for a diversion to the nearby GWI airport. He was familiar with this airport, but the ground control informed him that Gatwick had no more available runways and asked Flight 5390 to try to land at Southampton. He immediately switched to the ATC frequency for Southampton. At that moment, he had another concern. BAC 1111 couldn't burn off fuel before landing, plus there was the issue of runway length. Would it be long enough since the plane needed a minimum of 1,000 meters to land safely? ATC, this is Flight 5390, do you copy? Please respond once you receive this message. I need some help, I've never landed at this airport before. Don't worry, I'll guide you through it. I have one more concern, can you confirm that the runway length is acceptable? We need a minimum of 1,800 meters. So, go ahead and land on runway 5, it meets your requirements and is our longest runway. Aitchison breathed a sigh of relief and followed the controller's landing instructions, not forgetting to communicate. They informed them about the plane incident and the current situation of the captain, who was in disbelief at what he heard. They quickly called in a rescue team to the scene, and after a long effort from air traffic control and the crew, at 88 to 55 local time, Flight 5390 landed safely at Southampton Airport. The captain miraculously survived after nearly 22 minutes dealing with winds of 600 km per hour and temperatures close to 17 degrees. He was taken to the hospital. There was a situation where someone got frostbite, bruises, and broken bones in their right arm and left thumb. The head flight attendant only had minor injuries, and all the other passengers and crew members were safe and unharmed. Shortly after, the UK's Air Accident Investigation Branch, AIB, got involved to figure out what really caused the accident. They uncovered some shocking details about the plane's maintenance procedures. The engineers hadn't followed British Airways' maintenance policy for the BAC 115528FL aircraft. The windshield was installed just 27 hours before takeoff in a rush, and they used the wrong bolts. It was secured with 91 bolts, but 84 of them were 0.66 mm narrower than the standard size. This caused the pins to be too small to handle the pressure difference between the cabin and the outside air, which ultimately led to the accident. Plus, there was a secret revealed in FU-CH that shocked everyone. Flight 5390 was incredibly lucky when they decided to hold on to the captain, because if he had fallen, he would have been sucked into the engine at the wing, and the plane definitely would have been damaged. The fate of everyone on board would have been really uncertain. It was thanks to the kind gestures and the noble decision of the 81 passengers that Flight 5390 was able to create a miracle, saving the captain and helping him avoid a terrible tragedy.